Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Everyone's muted in here, I take it. I'm going to call the special council meeting to order where we've got one item on the agenda, which is the appeal of the order to comply on 10411 Southgate Road. It does sound like someone has not muted themselves. Is there anybody with an apparatus here that is not muted? All right, we'll carry on. So I'll call that one up. I'd like staff to come forward. We have your report, and just in the last few minutes, officers have gone out and taken updated photographs and circulated those. Now, as I understand, well, you tell me, what is your position and recommendation in terms of the premises generally, and what is your position in respect of the what you call derelict vehicles?
Your Worship, I am encouraged by the progress that has occurred in terms of cleaning up the unsightly areas in regard to vegetation. There's been significant progress on the back.
We can't hear very well.
We can't hear anything.
Okay, let's see what we can do. Can we turn him up?
I think he's up now.
No, the room's master. Let's turn it up. Okay, now say something.
Your Worship.
Okay, can you hear better now? Okay, there you go.
Your Worship, there has been significant progress in terms of cleaning up the unsightly vegetation, both in the front yard and in the backyard. So we're encouraged by that. What remains, however, are 3 derelict vehicles. And under the unsightly bylaw, you are only allowed a maximum of 1. So it is our recommendation that we proceed with the order to comply.
All right, now when you say you're heartened by the vegetation situation, so are you making any recommendation that an order would pertain to the vegetation?
Your Worship, at this point, there's no longer a requirement for an order to comply in regards to the vegetation issue.
Now the derelict, what you call the derelict vehicles, there's 3 of them in the driveway. I understand from your report they are uninsured, but what else are they? I mean, does that make them a derelict vehicle, or is there more to it?
Your Worship, there are 2 conditions that constitute a derelict vehicle as defined in the unsightly bylaw. The first is the requirement for insurance. The second requirement is for operability. It's not possible at this point to determine whether they're operable. However, one of the vehicles has I believe a Chrysler LeBaron, has a flat tire. It is possible that that could be changed and made operable again. We're operating under the assumption that as of yesterday, the vehicles were not insured, and we're making inquiries with ICBC as to whether they've been insured as of today, but our understanding is that they are not, and we are currently checking with ICBC as well to see that current status of insurance.
So your recommendation is that we would carry on with the order in relation to those 3 vehicles?
Your Worship, that's correct.
Okay. 3 of them or 2 of them?
2 of the vehicles, 1 derelict vehicle is allowed under the bylaw.
All right. Okay, so that's what would remain. Okay. Anything else to add? Because we'll ask the appellant to come forward.
Your Worship, nothing further to add.
All right. Madam, I understand you're the appellant. Could you come forward? Yes, please have a seat and introduce yourself.
Certainly. Just a moment, please. Here, I can take this off from here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marilyn Withers, and I'm the daughter of the owner of the premises at 10411 Southgate Road. There has been a number of issues regarding the property, and this has been going on for a number of years. Before I start to go into what I would like to talk to you about regarding the issues of the cars and some of it, I did have a number of difficulties in trying to put in an appeal here. And the gentleman I spoke to at one point suggested it would be a good idea to bring to your attention some of the concerns that I had or difficulties I had in trying to place an appeal, and that you may want to be aware of what occurred.
May I suggest, because we do need to hear that kind of feedback on the process, may I suggest that you either put it into the form of a letter or an email and submit it to us, and we will have staff take that under advisement to improve the process.
Okay, well, some of the very senior staff are the ones that never responded to me. So I'm very concerned when Mr. Mike Corrado never returned phone calls. Your Aman Sharma, who had in one of the letters telling me that I had to call him, and in fact he was on vacation the whole time, so I was very stressed trying to reach someone that wasn't even available.
If you could send it to my office, I can assure you that we will process it and take it under consideration.
Because this happened several times, it wasn't just a one-off, and I was then left at the very last moment when I called through to the clerk's office, because the bylaws office said they couldn't help me, or had to talk to clerks. Clerks could not respond or give me any information. They said I'd have to wait till the manager phoned back. She never responded, and there I was on the Thursday morning, September the 1st, with no information of what I was supposed to do or where to send anyone, and no one would phone back or no one would give me any info, even those that I spoke with. And so that morning, I had again asked for information of how to contact Mike Corrado and Matt O'Halloran, and that was on Wednesday afternoon at closing time, because I didn't know what to do or what I was supposed to do. And Matt called me the following morning at 9 o'clock, because I was getting ready to phone into him and to them. And he'd said he'd sent me emails. I never got them, rather. And then he said you could respond by email, but there was nothing to respond to. I called again at lunchtime, and he said he'd try sending it again. Nothing came through. And so there I was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon trying to write up a letter and race down here to give it to you in person, so it would be in by 5 o'clock. One of his emails finally showed up that night, but nothing came in during the daytime, and I had a 5 o'clock deadline. So it was extremely stressful, and that was very detrimental to my health, because I started well a week in advance trying to get all of this for you, because that was the second time that they had postponed appeals, because the other one had been on vacation, and the Tracy Christopherson had delayed things to wait till the other person was back. Then they were going ahead, then no one phoned back, etc. And so it just had me running. And of course, this stress is not good right now. I'm waiting to go in for surgery. And all of this just caused another flare-up of everything that's already going wrong, that puts me very vulnerable for my health care right now. And as I'm sure all of you are aware, our health care situation is in very dire straits. And trying to get care is very difficult. And due to the car accident last year, the night before my dad died, I'm still waiting for surgery on that, and that was last November.
All right.
Okay.
Well, this is all, of course, very important. We do like to have a process that works well, even when there's deadlines involved. So if you could just send a letter to my office, I can assure you that we will take it under advisement and see what went sideways on this one.
Yes, because it was at various levels. It wasn't just at one. It was at a number of levels on several sets of occasions, until literally that last day I'm just being run ragged. Right. And that wasn't what I needed. And I started so far in advance to try to avoid that of dropping and running, because it was not healthy for me, and it ended up happening again.
All right.
So.
Now, you've heard about the vegetation. You've obviously done a lot of work there, but what staff have talked about is the derelict vehicles. What is your thoughts on the derelict vehicles? Okay,
I'd like to just very quickly say something about the vegetation. A big part of the problem with the vegetation, and I'm sorry I don't have a written submission for you today. I've been so busy trying to get other matters done that I just didn't have time to put together one for you, but I do have some pictures here, and on my cell phone I have to be able to show you of the various stages, and I would be very pleased to be able to put something together for you on this matter, because what happened way back in 2015, when they tore down the houses at the back, and they built the new houses in there, and tore down all the trees, except for one that we were able to rescue. They didn't bother tearing out the roots of the blackberry bushes. In fact, I had pictures at the time of the bulldozer, and all they did on that other property was take the gravel and put it on top of the roots, okay? And I had shown your staff that were coming out at the time about that, but they said it was nothing to do with them. It was not an issue. It was civil. The contractor on that side, the developer, they shook Mom and Dad's house so badly that they broke the foundation. At one point, with more shaking that they did, they broke my neighbor who was on the other side of us. Her closet collapsed with all of the shaking of the land, okay? Our house became inhabitable for quite a while, and I had two elderly parents that were in their late 80s and early 90s, and trying to manage with all of that went on. And so we ended up having to move out of the house well, my mother never did get a chance to come back in. What my concern at this point and how that is pertaining on the problem of the vegetation is all of this vegetation comes back every year, and I've got to cut it all down because the roots are on the other people's property. It's not on ours.
The vegetation is okay.
No, I know, but it's not okay because every year I've got to cut all of this down year after year. And this year, in the spring, I was not well because of the surgery, et cetera, from the injuries from the car accident and other health concerns that I can't get care for. We had that really bad weather. I'd already started cutting some of the vegetation down. And then in the end of May, with the care of my dad, we were able to bring him home for a while. My washing machine got broken with just the volume and the care aids, and it's a long story. And so I had to drag it all out to the laundromat and then use the dryer at home. And unfortunately, the bag split, and I was trapped in the laundry of the sheets and trying to get out of them, twisted my back and injured it and ended up in emergency. It was so bad that they had to do an MRI and wasn't sure whether I had vertebrae damage. And so fortunately did not when they got the results, but I was told it would be at least 4 to 6 weeks before I was going to be able to do anything because of the healing that needed to go on from the damage and the injury. So this is why there was such a prolonged.
About the vehicles. Please tell us about the vehicles. Are you going to move them?
Well, that's part of the problem too. My father is deceased and they are in his name, all but the one, and we are waiting for the death certificate, which we don't have because my father was injured and suffered traumas and faulty equipment in the hospital. At one point, his hand was broken in the care facility. His other hand was bloodied. I found him unconscious in the care facility. There's a number of issues going on. I've been advocating strongly since his death last November to try to get the coroner to investigate because of the injuries he sustained. And I do have pictures and other documentations of over all of it. And it's finally now reached the point that the chief coroner, Lisa Lapointe, is investigating into it. And she has assigned a medical investigation team to conduct an investigation into what occurred. The last time I spoke with the woman that is being assigned to us and her team, she had requested information, had not received it. And then I didn't have the car, and I had a bad medical experience with a procedure I underwent and was quite ill for about a week. I phoned again, and she was there was the long weekends, as you know, we've had 3 of them, and she was off on holidays. I left a message with another woman in the department, and she said she would get the message to the other lady, and I'm waiting for her call. In the last number of days, I've been trying to clean up what you needed with regards to the vegetation and to get someone who will come in and look at this blackberry issue, because they are still coming over the property, and they're 10 feet high that they come in, and I can't get them.
Cars.
Yes, I realize cars, but that other is a problem too.
No. We've finished talking about vegetation. We are now talking about cars.
Okay.
Are you going to do something about the
Well, as soon as
derelict
we're
cars?
not able to, I investigated by talking to the auto plan through regarding ICBC, and I had some familiarity of that when my mother died, that you have to transfer the cars into my father's name in order for us to then be able to put them on the road, you know what I mean, to insure them or to sell them or whatever one wants to do. And at the moment, without the death certificate, we're not able to transfer the cars or do anything. And so we're waiting to try to get the coroner to finish their investigation, be able to issue a death certificate, and then we're able to follow up with the cars.
How much time do you need to deal with the cars?
I don't know yet. She's been working on it, and I'd hoped to have a call back from her this past week, but it hasn't come in. So I've been trying to deal with the vegetation. I will be calling again this week to see if I can reach her. I had left a message for her to call back and hadn't received a call yet.
Ma'am, the first thing may I suggest you do is check with a lawyer, because I think the fact is your father has died. You, just hear me out. Your father has died. The cause, circumstances may be up in the air, but your father has died, and you can certainly get a death certificate.
No,
to
we
say-
can't, because the autopsy, apparently, the chief coroner has taken control of the situation with my father, and so therefore, until she's finished her investigations, they will not issue a death
How
certificate.
much time do you need to deal with the cars?
I don't know. I'm waiting to hear back from the coroner's office. I mean, this has been going on for months and months, and I just spoke with another lady that has waited 7 months to get her death certificate. So it's not just me that's running into this problem. And so as soon as we're able to get the death certificate, then we can make arrangements for the vehicles. And I'm just waiting to get that part of it done, and then we can go from there. But we can't transfer the cars. I remember when my mother passed away, unless we had a death certificate, they would not transfer them into my father's name. It was the same situation.
So your ambition is to put all the vehicles on the road?
Possibly, or we may be selling some of them. I just don't know yet. I'm waiting to try to get, I'm trying to get my surgery, trying to get my dad's autopsy, and trying to take care of another few financial matters regarding the provincial government where things have gone sideways, mainly because of COVID and everything's so backlogged because of property ownership.
All right, we've got a couple of questions. First of all, from Councillor Day.
I'm sorry, you're both...
We have a question from Councillor Day. Go ahead, Councillor Day.
Hello, thank you for coming forward today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
we
I
can
can.
hear you.
Good. My question is, given everything that you're going through, would you be prepared to move one of the vehicles or two of the vehicles to a storage facility? I myself have a vehicle and a RV at the North Fraser Storage Park, and it's pretty easy. We just take it there and it doesn't have to be insured.
I realize that, but at the moment, I don't think that the problem with regarding the coroner is going to take that much longer. So we are trying to just see if we can't get that process, that part, the death certificate, and then another whole level it will be going up to as to what other decisions need to be made and who else will be looking into the matter. Okay? Because once they have the autopsy, there's all of the information regarding his injuries, but that can come after.
Hang on. We'll go to Councillor Steves. Councillor Steves. You're muted, Harold.
Yeah, my first question, I've got two questions. The first one is to get to know, was your father, Chuck Withers, the school teacher?
And school principal, yes, he was. And my mother, Barbara Withers, I think you knew them. Yeah.
Both of them were my teachers. I know
Yes.
them very well.
Yes.
Okay, my second question, were the cars operative before your dad and mom died?
Some of them were, yes. And other one I don't know yet. I haven't had a chance to try it. One of them is just waiting for a water pump, but again, we can't take the car off or insure it to do anything until the ownership is moved over. And I would never have believed that it would have taken this long to get an investigation into my dad's death, given the injuries that he sustained, the pictures, I can show what happened, and it's just gone on forever. And just, I mean, to be fair, the accident I suffered was on the 15th. It was the day of that terrible flooding in Abbotsford, where it was just horrible conditions, and then the young man slammed into me on the freeway, and the following morning well, by lunchtime, my father had died with equipment that was not working, that had been turned off, and they had admitted that there was a problem with that equipment, so.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Anything else to tell us? Because we're now going, you can take your seat, ma'am, because we're going to deliberate.
Okay, and I have spoken to a lawyer, as you say, to contact one. I did speak to one, and they also said this, well, they said that it would have to wait until the transfer was gone over. So I did follow that route before already.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My suggestion is we would adjourn this hearing. It's unfortunate because we're going to have a new council, but my suggestion is we adjourn it until November 21st. So we have to go through the inaugural meetings, et cetera, and get to a GP on November 21st. What do you think about that? Or anybody else can make a suggestion. Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Worship. A lot of interesting comments. It appears to me the applicant is waiting on this death certificate, and I would say to a future date or until she is able to provide the death certificates and has it, and we can deal with it accordingly, and then we would have all the information and we could give a proper direction at that time, or at least I'd be more comfortable giving that direction at that time as opposed to just adjourning it to say, well, we'll meet again on it. I think we've got some, and I'm not going to comment on any of the information we receive, but given the improvements that I've seen, and I do have be quite frank with you, a major question with regard to the definition of a derelict car. I better talk to the people in my block about their derelict cars that are on blocks and license plates and stuff like that. So I would feel more comfortable with that, Your Worship.
Well, the suggestion is that we would put it off to a specific date, and I'm suggesting November 21st, which is a date of a general purpose committee meeting.
Okay.
In a month.
And we can take deliberations from there as well.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm
so you're
okay with
moving
that.
Just
Okay.
a minute. Are you moving that?
I'll move that.
Second. So that's moved and seconded. Now, what would have to be emphasized is to Mrs. Withers that she needs to take the steps and get this matter cleared up, if possible, by that date. So in any case, that's what's on the floor. Councillor Steves, Harold?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll support it, but I think there should be more time given. I look at those cars and they're looking pretty good shape to me, and I don't see that they qualify as derelict, and that's
right.
we use whether they're licensed or not, but when they're in that good a shape and that modern and that new, they certainly don't look derelict to me.
Well, we can take it under advisement at that time and see what the story is. Councillor Wolf.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate the information that came forward here today. I was just at the site actually an hour ago, and didn't go to the backyard, but did note that the front yard did look quite well maintained. And when it comes to the vehicles, I do know that there are organizations that do take donations, like carsforkids.org or the National Kidney Organization, and also just knowing Ms. Withers' condition, it probably would be helpful to have more space on the driveway for when you're going in and out of vehicles or when you're having support come after surgery. So again, I know you can't sell it or insure it, but perhaps the eventual outcome would be to donate one of them and just give yourself some more space on a solid ground, especially with winter coming. So I was definitely willing to support more time. I thought later than the end of this year, but I'll support November 21st, and if we need to at that point push it further, then I guess we will decide then. Thanks.
All right. I'm not seeing anyone else. We'll call the question then on putting this matter off to November 21st. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. Ma'am, we are now deliberating. The matter is now, please. No. Let me tell you, The matter has been put off till November 21st. And I suggest that in the meantime, you keep staff apprised as to your progress in sorting this matter out. And when it comes back in front of us, it'll be a new council actually, but when it comes back in front of council on November 21st, if not before, you can advise what's going on, whether you need more time, whether you've got it sorted out, or just what the situation is. So that is the decision, and we would hope that you would work constructively. We've got our staff here who are assisting on the matter, and they'll keep us apprised, but you keep them apprised as to how you're doing.
May I ask, who is it I'm supposed to contact after? And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
massively run around
This
that I've
is-
done about this. I don't know who I'm supposed to contact.
This is Mr. Corrado. He'll go outside in the hall with you and make sure that you've got contact information, but
He's the one that never phoned back when I left messages before for him.
well, that's not gonna happen again. Okay?
And when I come forward on the 21st, with regards to whether it's being resolved or whether there's,
Yeah.
what the situation is, I can bring in other information that may be extenuating to explain this situation, because as a few of you have mentioned about the dereliction that isn't, and there's
All
some
right.
reasoning for that.
You
as to why
can,
it's happened.
you can tell us anything that's pertinent at that time, but hopefully it gets resolved in the meantime.
Yes.
Okay? All right, thank you. All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Let me just get reorganized here. So now I'll call the General Purposes Committee meeting to order. Are you not staying with us, Counselor? Okay, he's here in person? Okay, so I'm gonna call the GP meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Someone move the minutes? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We have a delegation on a non-agenda item. Eric Balke, Senior you've got it here in front of you on the agenda, to talk about restoration on the Sturgeon banks. That is one of you. Please come forward, sir. Please have a seat. Introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind about this. Delegations are given 5 minutes.
I have that open, so you would just, this one right here, right? Okay. Okay. Do you want me to open it for you? Sure.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Just a minute. You need to mute that.
You mine too?
I'm sorry?
Mine's turned on too.
That's not what's causing it. It's caused by the laptop.
The laptop is muted.
You've turned off
Oh,
the,
right.
okay, let's try that again. Just a minute. Wait till you're ready.
Certainly.
Okay.
All right, ready?
Okay, is that better?
Perfect. All right. Just bring up the slideshow here. Alrighty. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this topic of great interest. As mentioned, my name is Eric Balk. I'm a senior restoration biologist with Ducks Limited Canada. And today I'm going to provide an update about 3 exciting Fraser River Estuary salmon habitat or FRESH restoration projects, 2 of which are taking place within the city of Richmond. This includes an innovative project called the Sturgeon Bank Sediment Enhancement Pilot Project, for which we plan to begin construction within the next few weeks. And so these projects, these projects are primarily funded with $5 million from the Federal Provincial BC Salmon Restoration and Innovation Fund. These projects are led by Ducks Limited Canada in partnership with Rain Coast Conservation Foundation, Tsawwassen First Nation, and the Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance, with support from the City of Richmond and a dozen additional organizations. Through this project, we plan to complete 3 significant salmon habitat enhancement projects throughout the estuary from 2021 through 2024. This includes 2 projects addressing short-term salmon habitat connectivity and quantity needs in the estuary, and 1 project addressing long-term resilience needs in the estuary. So briefly, the first project involves the restoration of tidal marsh at the Alaxon National Wildlife Area at the northern tip of Westham Island in Delta. There are 2 fields here where we plan to breach the dikes, restore tidal flow, and restore tidal marsh. This project is actually a rare local example of managed dike realignment and giving land back to the Fraser Estuary. The second project, led by Raincoast Conservation Foundation, is the North Arm Jetty breaches, and this project builds upon similar work recently completed in Steveston. So the plan is over 3 years to construct 3 breaches in the North Arm Jetty beside Iona Island. The purpose of the breaches is to provide an off-ramp for juvenile salmon to provide them access to intertidal habitat that is isolated by the presence of the North Arm Jetty and the Iona sewage outflow. And actually, the construction of the middle breach was completed earlier this year in March 2022, and the next breach will be constructed in February 2023. Now, the third and final project is the Sturgeon Bank Sediment Enhancement Pilot Project. Since the 1980s, at least 160 hectares of tidal marsh have died off at Sturgeon Bank. This is a significant ecological loss given the importance of tidal marshes for juvenile salmon and other fishes, for waterfowl, shorebirds, carbon sequestration, and coastal flood protection. Since then, there have been 2 collaborative initiatives to determine why the tidal marsh has died off and what actions can be taken to restore the marsh. These research projects suggest that adding sediment may help to restore the ecosystem and support ecological resilience with sea level rise. And so looking at examples from around the world, talking with experts and working with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, we've come up with a concept to add sediment to the Sturgeon Bank foreshore to try to restore the marsh. And the objective here is to mimic natural riverine sediment delivery into the target area. This will be done using a temporary sediment delivery pipeline to pump sediment, dredged from the Fraser River, directly onto the southwestern Lulu Island foreshore of Sturgeon Bank. And the pink line in the figure here indicates the approximate location of the proposed sediment pipeline. 3 sediment mounds, each 150 meters long by 100 meters wide, will be initially formed. This will be accomplished incrementally over at least 2 consecutive years. Starting in mid-November, construction crews will be working on the tidal flats to add this sediment. They will be working with a sediment pipeline, boats, and heavy machinery during daytime and nighttime hours. The overall goal of the pilot project is to demonstrate the biological and the physical response of the Sturgeon Bank foreshore to sediment addition. So the idea here is to implement, adaptively manage, and evaluate the concept on a smaller pilot scale, and if successful, we could potentially scale it up across the entire western Lulu Island foreshore and even to other areas of the Fraser Delta Front. This project could set a new precedent for repurposing dredged sediment to support ecological resilience in the Fraser Estuary. Sturgeon Bank also supports flood protection for the city of Richmond. A healthy Sturgeon Bank is an important part of mitigating flood risk for the city as it protects the dike from wind-generated waves. With future sea level rise, the protection afforded to Richmond by this feature may be considerably reduced. The council-endorsed flood protection management strategy and dike master plans phases 1 and 2 recognize the important wave attenuation benefits that Sturgeon Bank tidal marshes provide. This plan recommends key actions to mitigate sea level rise, including potentially installing breakwater islands similar to this concept. Now, I recognize that was a very quick overview, but if we have time, I'm happy to address any questions.
I'll start off with the question. Is part of the cause of this damage to the Sturgeon Banks what's happening at Iona with the wastewater treatment plant?
To the chair, that's not to my knowledge. We have several leading hypotheses, but works at Iona we do not believe are related to the tidal marsh loss off of Lulu Island.
It was just that if that was one of the causes, you know, they're completely reconstructing that facility, and it would be a good opportunity. So we'll go to Councillor Steves. Harold.
Yeah, does the DFO still have stations out on Sturgeon banks where they measure the loss of foreshore? Because decades ago, I used to walk out with the biologist from, well, they call it lac sand now, but it was at the bird sanctuary area. And they had a couple of stations, and they kept an accurate estimate of how much soil was being lost. And I was just wondering if they're still doing that.
One of our research partners has been continuing a lot of that monitoring, I believe, that Councillor Steves mentioned. We, off of Lulu Island, a lot of the old research infrastructure has eroded and whatnot, but in recent years we've constructed new stations to monitor changes in sediment elevation over the last 7 years or so.
Okay, just to pass on, because I don't know if you got this information or not, what we determined way back in the 1980s was the problem was not just a break in the training wall or in the jetty, it's the Sturgeon jetty, but they raised the jetty, the entire 7 miles or 14 kilometers was raised. And what happened was that the tide, the silt, before they raised the jetty, the river water washed over and dropped the silt onto Sturgeon banks. Once they raised the jetty, the silt was taken straight out, dropped beyond Sturgeon banks. The tide came in without silt and took the soil out. And we have lost about a meter, not just in the foreshore, but 14 kilometers out. You can walk out there now and you will find ammunition from the army camp where they fired ammunition in World War II lying on top. It used to be under a meter of soil, and that's way out. So I'm just skeptical that you're going to solve that problem with just one breach of the North Arm jetty and one breach of the South Arm, because you're still going to have water that it doesn't have silt, take it back out again. They did try at the Steveston Bend a decade or 20 or 30 years ago, the port, because we complained about this and told them they had to do something. And they did pump some sand and stuff over, sand and silt out of the river at the bend, and it washed away. So I guess my question is, how are you going to keep it there unless you lower that jetty and allow the free flow of the silt to keep the silt in place?
To Councillor Steves, the breaches that have been constructed in the Steveston North Jetty by Rain Coast Conservation Foundation recently, and the breaches currently in progress of the North Arm Jetty, their purpose isn't to add sediment, it's to provide that fish access.
Right.
But with respect to the sediment that we're adding, there was previously some modeling done by Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, paid for by the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, looking at what if we were to deposit one large mound of sediment several kilometers offshore, west of the West Dyke Trail, or 5 large mounds. And through a numerical modeling study, one of the conclusions was that sediment, the sand from those mounds, more or less stays in place. So one thing that we learned is if we wish to deliver sand, or deliver sediment rather, to where we want the marsh to grow, we need to deliver it directly into place, directly at that location. And so with this pilot project, we don't know 100% what will happen when we do this sedimentation. We don't know if the sediment is, as you suggest, may be washed away by the tides or how it will be distributed. So in this first year in particular, we're taking a more moderate amount of sediment and doing lots of monitoring of it. So we have on-the-ground stations to measure changes in elevation, and we're coupling that with remote sensing, so using drones to detect changes in elevation. So the core purpose is to understand what happens when we do this, and how can we do this better in the future to maximize sediment retention. So this is all part of the learning process.
Okay, I've got one further question. Another thing we tried to do 20 years ago, we have to dredge Scotch Pond every few years, and it's filled with sediment now. We had tests done, and the soil is not sand. In fact, what they said is Class 1 agricultural soil, and yet we're told we have to dredge it out and dump it at sea. our proposal was that we would actually have a dredge set up and put pipes across and add it to Sturgeon banks, and we got a negative response from it. So could you consider dredging that channel for us as part of this, because the dredging needs to be done and the soil is fantastic.
To Councillor Steves, I think moving forward, there's great potential for reusing dredge aid, like you're suggesting. And one of the core purposes of this project is to demonstrate we can reuse this sediment to support ecological resilience. No one's been trying this. There's some sediment that's been reused for tidal marsh habitat compensation, where you get banking credits, but no one has tried to reuse sediment in this way, where you're mimicking natural processes. So I think the potential moving forward for potentially repurposing dredge sediment from Scotch Pond is immense. And so this is a first step to, I hope, a long journey of supporting these ecosystems and our flood defenses.
Yeah. Okay, final comment. The entire Steveston Harbor is full of very good sediment as well. And again, we're told we have to dump it at sea. So keep that in mind.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you very much for coming. I'm very passionate on the same topics or same reasons. I got a few questions as well. So first, to highlight from your presentation, you showed that floating pipeline, kind of a magenta color. Would there still be routes for recreational users to get out of the canoe pass, or would that, during its installation and work, prevent any recreational user from going out, I guess? Because the way it showed on the map is it's going to come up and over the jetty where the breach is and then close off that section. Could you comment on that first?
Councillor Wolf, yes, there will be a temporary navigation obstruction just for the duration of the construction works. We anticipate, so part of the learning of this is we don't know how long it will take. No one's tried putting a pipeline that long out there. So we're trying to reduce the uncertainty by trying this. So our goal is to try to minimize any temporary disruptions. I suspect it will be more on the order of a week or less. And this is, of course, in the winter, where canoes and kayaks are less likely to be out in that area.
Thank you. My further questions on that. I have about a 9-foot boat, and I've gone all the way around both jetties and the sewage jetty as well, and many times high tide, low tide for all the months of the year. And I've walked out on what that is, the mud flat or sand flat, looking for marsh plants or any evidence, but it's like, as far as you can see, the same landscape. And so my next question is, in the report, the one I read, the 16-page report called A Vision for Restored Lower Fraser, I think it was in that report, it mentioned that you're going to plant 3 square bulrush, the common bulrush. But through my plant identification guides, the American bulrush or the sea coast bulrush is more suited for brackish conditions.
To Councillor Wolf, at the location that we're targeting sediment addition, historically, it actually would have been a mixture between common 3 square bulrush and seacoast bulrush. So we have a vegetation survey that was actually multiple vegetation surveys that were done in the 1980s prior to marsh recession. And so we actually have a graduate student research experiment currently through BCIT and SFU, where they've actually done some initial transplants of both species within the target zone. So we want to better understand which species or both may be better at surviving. So part of that trial and error, see what works.
Yeah, right on. Thanks. Through the chair, the next question.
Well, just hold it a sec. We're getting down to a level of detail that I think you should speak to this gentleman about it, okay?
Sure. The next one's on that level. It's to fall in line with Councillor Steves, I guess, trying to connect with the Steveston Harbor Authority as being a source. Also, it wasn't mentioned in any of these reports, the Fraser River Sturgeon Conservation Society, of which Rick Hansen's quite heavily involved. I know Lafarge wants to contribute more financially, and I know part of the BC Nature Force is trying to get organizations to help fight nature with nature, as you seem to do really well. And then I guess my last question then relates to how the government can be involved, because in the last section of that 16-page report, it mentions needing to connect with governments. And I know you've spoken to us and are available for us today, and I'll reach out to you if I can grab your card later. But I think if there was maybe a united front of Delta, Richmond, Vancouver that are all along the shoreline, that all contribute to or can contribute to working in some synergy. So I know this week there's the Soul of the Fraser movie being shown. I think there's a lot of support. Our city supported the Year of the Salish Sea, which is ongoing right now. So I think there's lots out there. I just feel like we need to be asked to be connected or involved in
All right,
more
we'll
ways.
take that as a comment. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you to the delegation. A very interesting presentation, and just two questions, one for you. So there's going to be a lot of monitoring happening. You're going to be looking at the impacts to the loss of the tidal marsh and the flood defenses. Will there be monitoring of salmon and other species, the impact to them? Because, with Iona, you're hoping to get, more salmon getting up. And will there be that kind of monitoring as well?
To Councillor McPhail, yes, certainly. We've already begun baseline monitoring this past summer. So we've been monitoring juvenile salmon use of all 3 projects areas prior to any construction restoration works. And we plan to continue monitoring next year. And we're looking at additional funding opportunities to continue that monitoring longer term. We also biofilm is a hot button issue in the Fraser Estuary. It's a sticky substance that sticks to the top of mud flat and is very important energy food for migratory shorebirds. And so we've also been working with some researchers at Environment and Climate Change Canada to monitor biofilm before we do the restoration works and also monitor afterward to better understand what is that biophysical response, to make sure that we maximize our learnings from this opportunity to really understand what happens when we do this.
Thank you. And my second question is to staff. These projects are really, really fascinating, and there will be lots of work done. People will be walking on the dike and they'll see work happening. I'm just wondering, is information about these projects on our website? Like, is there a link somehow if people ask questions? And
All right.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor McPhail, we are working with Ducks Unlimited. We have signage out in the work area, and we are also distributing some placard cards via mail through all the residents in the local area. And we continue to work with Ducks as to how they're distributing their information through their particular websites, not specifically through ours, to divert some of those questions.
all right, thanks very much.
All right, back to Councillor Day. You've got a question.
No, it's me.
No, it's not you, Harold. It's Councillor Day. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for coming forward. This is certainly a very exciting project. So I have 2 questions. First of all, can you send those slides to council so that we can share them with the general public? And second question, you appear to have federal funding for this project. Do you have a letter of some sort from the federal government supporting this project?
So the funding that we have is both from both the federal and provincial governments, and when the Minister for Fisheries and Oceans Canada approved our project for funding, that acted essentially as an authorization. We have gone through the appropriate regulatory approvals. So we have, for example, an authorization under the Wildlife Act for conducting these works within the wildlife management area. I'm not sure if we have a formal letter of approval, but we have those authorizations as required.
Okay. I think I'd like you to send those to us so that we can show, other people in the public that we're following up with a really innovative federal and provincial project. And to staff, I just want to say that any area that's accessible by the public should have information signs, because we're going to get about 1,000 letters a day from people going, what are you doing to Sturgeon banks? So let's let them know that this is a positive thing, and this sediment deposit is actually going to help the salmonoids.
All right, Councillor Steves.
Yeah, a quick question for staff. I'd like to know how this fits in with the berms, the sea berm we were intending to put out to keep away the storm surges from the West Dike. If the staff have looked at that, and if this fits in with it or not, and if not, then we should refer it to staff to determine whether it does have any effect.
We'll get you an answer for that. Do you have any questions for the delegation?
No, just staff.
Okay. Thank you. We will excuse the delegation. Thank you for a very interesting presentation, and I'm sure we're going to be talking more about this. So we'll excuse you, but we'll go to staff on the question about the CBRM.
Through the chair to Councillor Steves, we'll continue to refine our plans for that area as we learn more about the Sturgeon Bank sediment deposit, as it's still in the early conceptual stages and we don't have a design right now for the ultimate alignment of that CBRM. We'll have to revise our plan depending on the outcomes of this project.
So you'll coordinate to a certain extent with this project?
Through the chair to Mayor Brody, that's correct.
Okay, just to comment, it seems to me if we put the sea berms in the right places, it might keep the marsh, hold the marsh in as well. So once we do finalize it, it may actually be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. And thanks again for the presentation. Very interesting. That brings us to the adaptation, resilience, and disaster mitigation, et cetera, grant application. Is there anything staff wants to add to your report?
Nothing further to add to the report, Mr. Chair. I can answer any questions.
Okay, someone want to move it?
Recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. So I see on GP7 that the deadline was October 7th. Today is October 17th. Have we got an extension for the application?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, do you mind repeating the last portion of your question? I'm not sure if the audio in here cut out.
Have we got an extension?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the grant requirement is that we can provide the council resolution up to 1 month after our application. So we intend to provide that should council support the proposed grant application today.
Okay.
We're good.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. My question through the chair to staff is on our page GP7. It mentions that this work would include increasing the width of the roadway and incorporating a multi-use trail for pedestrian cycling use. So with this grant application and all of the area that we're talking about upgrading, would there be a separate multi-use path as opposed to sections where it comes together? Because there has been previous work where that's the case, where the multi-use path ends and now the new height of dike has the cyclist using the same lane as the vehicles. So could you comment on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we'll learn from the lessons that we've obtained from upgrading the adjacent sections of the dike. So in close communication with what we've heard from residents as well as our transportation department, and the ultimate cross-section will be designed to reflect those findings. So we find for safety purposes, that's the most desired alignment, as well as it works for a flood protection. It's something we can explore at that time.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. Well, thanks to staff for the report. You know, it's very interesting, but it's also important that we just acknowledge the importance of reserves in this form. This is the Dike and Drainage Reserve, but without the reserves on hand to leverage the grants from the province or the federal government, in this case, we wouldn't be able to do that, because we do have to come to the table, and I guess this is a question. I believe I'm correct in that the reserve is applied at 2.4, I think, 2.477 million, so that we can then leverage the grants to do this. And I think it's very proactive on the part of staff, but I'd just like to emphasize to the public, that's the importance of having reserves, in this case, the drainage reserve. So very, very well done.
All right. Okay, anyone else? We'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And now we're going to name the Stevenson Community Center, et cetera. Does staff have anything to add to the report?
Nothing further to add, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Move recommendation.
So that's moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? It's not a big leap from the look of it. Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And someone want to move adjournment? Okay.